Well, welcome to Ways to Love Your Money. It's season 5. We're excited about this show. We have Ande Frazier that's going to be here today. We've had her on the show before. This is a copy of her book, Finally Financially Free. We're going to talk about some of those points. And again, we're in Women's History Month. So the month of March is Women's History Month and more empowerment to strong women out there. And we want to celebrate you all. So without making you wait much longer, this is going to be a very important conversation that we're going to have. And it's really talking and going and digging deep in basically women's relationship with money. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. You won't want to miss it. Hi, it's Elizabeth Dawson again. We're back here with Ways to Love Your Money. I've got Miss Ande Frazier here, and she's a great colleague and friend of mine, and I can't wait to hear her story, especially with the copy of her book here. We talk about this financially free. We've talked about this book on the show before, but this is truly about a relationship and a guidebook to help you get through. But again, welcome back again, Ande. It's wonderful to have you here.
Oh, well, it's great to be back for sure.
Yes. And I know life is busy, business is busy, and we're start off to the first quarter of the new year. And right now we're in March, and it's, Women's History Month. So I know you've got a story with that, but at the same time, what is your inspiration about Women's History Month at this time?
We still are in a very watershed moment, if you will. I have seen such tremendous growth over the last few years around women not only taking leadership roles in their companies and making different decisions with regards to their families, but also
Right.
having a desire to learn more about money. And, this last year has brought about even further changes and somewhat exacerbated the fact that for many women, they were hit harder during the last year than others, and so money continues to be a topic of conversation. And so it just drives home why I love what I do and why I want to help women be able to partner with somebody on their financial journey.
Well, I think that's an amazing thing because I could agree with you very, very much when the fact, last year, basically we're 1 year into COVID now. So the shutdown women, we have to go virtual. I mean, we're now in this scenario where we're talking virtual, but you're on the other side of the country. I'm on the other side of the country. But what do you think has been something that women have been able to get through? Like what have been their biggest hurdles? What do you think at this point have been women's biggest hurdles, financially speaking, over the past year?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of women were faced with this weird dilemma. Some lost their jobs. We saw a lot of women lose their jobs because they were in the service industries. But we also saw women that did have maybe work, but they were working from home. And now they were also schooling their children. Their children
Right.
were doing homeschool. So I think that the time that we had as women got even further stretched. We were
Mhm.
already pretty stretched, pretty thin before all this happened. So now and so I do think that that adds to the productivity level of maybe some women and their ability to work, and the stress level, which affects our health, which isn't great for being out in a pandemic. And then certainly the financial strain that so many families have had with either job loss or cutbacks, or just changing the way that we live and now having to adapt to that. I think it's hit a lot of families really hard. And I know we have this stimulus that's just coming out, but it's been a year, and so I think many families are already finding themselves, way beyond the point of where a few $1,000s is going to help.
That's a great point that you're taking right there because, either some people really don't need it, but I would imagine, especially families with children, that they're saying, you got to stay on track, you got to stay on track. And it's socially not good for children that have been kind of cooped up in home all this time, especially with moms too. But, I've got to make the meal, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. Um, they're, I'm hoping that we have a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but that is a concern for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
I'm hoping we're turning the corner for sure.
yeah. Well, I know that women in general have some obstacles about getting good financial advice. What do you think some of those obstacles are right now that we have been dealing with, not just the past year, but even ongoing? Where do you think that women kind of have more obstacles to get to financial freedom, if you will? No pun intended, but financial freedom in their own definition so that they feel confident about where they're at today. Obviously, if they've lost their job and permanently lost their job, that's a problem. It's about reinventing and what are you seeing? What are you thinking? What are you forecasting for the future?
Well, I think that women still struggle to find a good advisor, someone that's going to build a relationship with them, that's going to listen to them, that's going to make sure that their concerns and needs are met, perhaps differently than their male counterparts. And so I think that continues to be a struggle. I do think that more and more women are learning about money and wanting to get educated about their finances, and that's
Sure.
great. However, we do still talk to women every day that struggle with how to take a more active role in their family around money. They're doing the bills perhaps, but they're not able to see the planning aspects. And so whether that be that their partner is not sharing with them everything that's going on, or they feel like they don't know and they don't know the questions to ask, I just find a lot of women still really struggle with that. And so the more that we talk about it and the more avenues we give women to connect with good professional people, then I think we're going to start to see women really take advantage and get into action. And that's what I hope.
Well, I mean, I think that's very exciting because now is time to take advantage of the options that you have. I really want to talk about, it's on page 47 of your book, and it's called a money mentor. So how do people, or how do women now actually identify a great money mentor to kind of coach them and help them through some of these decisions that they should be making and maybe are putting off because they thought someone else was going to take care of it for them?
Well, you want your money mentor to guide you and also advocate for you. Not just do everything that you think you need to do, but that will push back a little bit and hold you accountable for the things that you say that you want. And so they'll work with you on your values and goals and action plans. And they won't just focus on, the rates of return that you might get in your investments, but instead will make sure that you understand why you're doing what you're doing and how it's going to move you forward and what the impacts of that may be. And so a money mentor should be not just somebody who, activates the action plan, but then pushes back and really challenges you and helps you to build your own relationship with money so that you stay persistent and consistent over time.
Well, I think that's a key is it's persistence, it's discipline, and it is having a better relationship over time with your money, just that it's going to be there. I know a big factor that we're concerned about now, especially with the news, with all the stimulus, which, people are happy they're getting it, not everybody's getting it, but there are trillions of dollars of additional debt now within our government that they're going to have to, and they're saying that they're going to raise taxes, and on top of that, inflation is going to be a factor. Again, for women, not every woman knows about that. We are two unique individuals that learn, know a little bit more about that in our world. But it is, what kind of concerns do you see for women right now about inflationary factors, tax factors, and having to work even harder now, especially like what you said in the beginning, where, they might be working from home and they're, trying to educate their children. They're still trying to take care of the house and everything else. And at what point do you just throw your hands up?
We as women have a lot of different challenges. We don't make as much as men in the workforce still to this day. There's many times when women are taking time off to care for loved ones, whether it be young children or elderly parents or loved ones. And so we also don't always get to save money until maybe later on in life. So we have all of these things going against us before the pandemic hit. And now we see that, with spending money, and we need to be able to control that so that we can start to save money. And remember, traditionally, women live longer than men. And so if
Mm-hmm.
a woman is living longer than her male partner, then she needs to plan for that. And she needs to make sure that she's not only got money to take care of herself, but that she's got money to take care if she needs maybe long-term care assistance or health concerns. So there is a gap there that we have to really fill for these women. And so one of the things that I recommend that women do is really start to pay attention to that as early on as possible, because the longer you wait, the harder it is to make up that gap.
Well, very well said, because the fact that, we don't necessarily think that way. We were never trained to think that way or encouraged to think that way, even as children. The relationship of money stems from how our parents, dealt with money and what they taught us too. And I have seen this in over the years, the last 22 plus years, where sometimes it is maybe a little bit later, but then maybe the female in the relationship is getting to the place where saying, okay, what are we dealing with right now? But they are usually the ones that will say, I don't really want to be in the meeting. For us, we want, all parties to be there. And I think you also touched on a point where it's very important to talk about, because we are somewhat in the sandwich generation. We've been raising our children, but there's quite a few of us, including myself, that are looking out for a parent that maybe has lived longer and they didn't have enough money because they weren't necessarily planning for that inflationary portion of their life. And it's something where we have to help, or there's a health event, like you said. Families are facing these things every day. Do you think that there's a challenge between in a male-female relationship where women don't necessarily feel like they can say something, or how do you think that it affects their relationship with their spouse or their partner?
A lot of women I hear will ask their partner to be more open and transparent about what's going on with the finances, especially around the planning stuff, not the budgeting stuff, but what do we have saved? What's our retirement plan look like? What are our investments? And a lot of men will be like, "Don't worry, honey, I've got it taken care of," and they just kind of push them aside. And I have had so many women come to me and say, "I really don't know what else to do." They don't want to create waves in their relationship, and then their spouse will be like, "Don't you trust me?" And you want to trust them, but you also want to know what's going on. And what I hear from men a lot who are honest and trustworthy is that they want their wives to ask those questions. They want the females in their lives to be able to know what's going on, because if God forbid something happened to them, they would want to make sure that they were empowered to make good decisions. And so whenever I hear that a man is pushing back and doesn't want his wife to know what's going on, that's always like huge red flags that maybe there's something there that that woman really needs to find out about. And so I would recommend you certainly don't sign anything unless you read through all of it yourself. Don't just sign it because it's thrown in front of you. Ask questions and push back, and refuse to do certain things with your name on it unless you understand what it is you're doing, so that you don't find yourself in a real predicament. And I think you have to ask those questions. Why won't you share what's going on with me? What is it that you're not willing to share with me, or that you may be hiding, that doesn't allow me to learn? I want to learn. I want to know. It's our money. I think I deserve to have those answers. And so certainly you have to handle that delicately, because you don't want to, end up in a very domestic violent position. And there's certainly those relationships that can get to that point. But you need to be able to push back a little bit so that you can figure out what's going on. And if they still refuse, then that tells you that there may be something you need to look into a little bit further.
And I think that's the fear. We've talked with people over the years that has been the fear, that there might be retaliation because they want to know more information. And I'm glad that you brought that up, because that could be that red flag that people, that women need to be aware of, that, they still have control in their world. But if they feel like they're in a fearful situation, they definitely need to check into that and get some help for it. You already started to ask some of the questions that I think that women need to ask their partner in life about. I think that that's really important. There's probably so many more questions to ask. Just from a standpoint, it's not just about doing this. I've told people in the past too that even when they come in to see me to get some financial help, I don't want you to just give it to me to do and figure it out, and then you come back and tell me later that, well, I don't know what that was. It's an educational process to know where everything's at, because again, you said something very important, that men don't have necessarily as long of a life expectancy as women, and women pretty much do live longer than men. So what they're left with is something for them to figure out, and they don't necessarily know where to start. So what would you suggest for a lady out there that is kind of thinking that these are things that are coming? What would you suggest to these ladies that are listening to this show right now? Maybe the first start, or the first piece to make the first step in getting a better knowledge of their relationship with money, and then also trying to find out relationship with money between the family.
Well, wow, that's really, we could spend an hour talking about that. I think
I'm sure we could.
I think first of all, really understanding kind of where you are today and what's going on, and then starting to educate yourself. There's so many great financial education online courses and books and things that you could be listening and asking about. There's meetup groups that are doing things virtually versus in person. Maybe we'll get back to in-person meetings. I think talking to a professional is certainly what I would advise a lot of women. I see so many women that are not talking to professionals, but that are using online influencers and other people that are uncredentialed and really have no foundation in really, activating the plans, and that can get them in trouble. I've definitely been helping some women get out of some pickles that they had gotten themselves into because they listened to somebody online that, was just trying to make money on YouTube and wasn't really knowledgeable about what really was going on legally and with their money. So I think it's important to make sure you're talking with a professional. Certainly be thinking about retirement, but not just about having the money to spend in retirement, but also what your life might be like that. So I love to have women visualize what their life might be like in retirement, both with their partner and if something were to happen, what would they want? How would they want that to be? Because that really does play into, what their retirement income should look like. That burn rate of how you spend money is just as important as how much money you have to spend. So I think it's a good exercise for women to explore that for themselves.
Well, that is so important to talk about because even in what the work that we do is we want to see, well, we're both alive and we're working and we're spending through our burn rate. And life looks okay or good. What kind of impacts will happen when one spouse dies before the other? And we talk a lot about that. And what is that decline, and is that percentage a very high percentage? And I think, ladies, you've got to know what that percentage of loss of income would look like in the event that your partner, spouse passed before you. What could you live off of that money? And I do think that's a very important conversation. And also just awareness and education as a whole are so important. And again, influencers are out there for everything. Ande, I think you just totally touched on that. And if they don't really have the historical background or the information to give that influencing advice, I think that's very well said and very brought up at a very important time. There's no two people that are the same, and I think we've learned that over the years. Whether you're female, whether you're male, whether you're gay or whatever it might be, we all have a different personality, and our relationship with money is so very different. I think that, having the conversations, getting the advice up front is so important, but it's a transition of life. It, like you said, not just about retirement. We should be saving for retirement because that's our responsibility. No one's going to do that for us. But we really need to start having a future vision of what that looks like. I love the idea that you talk about in regards to just kind of visualizing that future, because that is so important to really see what you want. I think sometimes we're just working so hard, we kind of forget about what's happening next, but very important to kind of stop, take a conscious pause, and really dig deep into what matters most to you. So any final words, Ande? Is there any final words of encouragement or desire to help educate more? Is there anything that you'd like to bring up for that?
Well, I can tell you that ignoring a problem doesn't make it go away. It just builds. And so I think that you're right, Elizabeth. So many of us get so busy with work and family and friends and community and all the things that we have to do, that the last thing we may be thinking about is our money. But the longer we delay looking at it, the harder it's going to be to make up that difference. And, there is a learning process to this, just like anything that's worthwhile, you have to learn. And so, as much as I said that, people relying on influence may not be a good thing, I think that one thing that I've been really surprised about is that they have been able to get the message out about money. They have made it a little bit cooler again. So I think, take advantage of all that. But at the end of the day, working with a professional like you or like me, or somebody that really is going to dive into your individual situation is really key. And the sooner you can get started, one step forward, then the better off you'll be.
I agree. Again, thank you so much, Ande, for being here on the show again, because we just love having you. You're an incredible inspiration to us. Women's History Month here. We're female entrepreneurs. It's a wonderful place to be, and I think that we have a message to tell a lot of people. I just love your stories all the time, and I think it's so much so it needs to be taken advantage of for people that are absolutely listening to the show. Again, I want to give a little plug here for Ande's book. This is an incredible read. It's something that I think that not only just women need to read, but even men, and I think even children. Finally financially free is so important to think about, but it's about putting those tools and that education in front of you. Life skills are so important. It's the one thing that it really isn't taught in school for our children, even throughout college. So life skills, especially with the relationship with money, is so, so valuable. Again, make sure you get a copy there. We'll make sure you get connected to Ande if you like. And stay tuned. We'll be right back for more of this episode. I told you wouldn't want to miss that show. Basically, this is a very enlightening conversation for women, especially out there with their relationship with money. Now is not the time to procrastinate. It's not going to change or get better. If you have a hard time talking about money, now is the time to get educated. Education is going to be a very key component. Not only do we have, Finally Financially Free, which was written for the female audience, but also our book, Wealth by Design. Any piece that you can glean from financial education and those life skills are going to be so important, not only today, but for the rest of your life. You need to know what to expect, especially if your husband has planned everything for you or your partner has planned everything for you and you don't necessarily understand it. Now is the time to understand, get involved, take action with that. That's a major call to action for you. Don't be intimidated by it. Don't be embarrassed. I had someone reach out to me just today and they were kind of like embarrassed. I don't ever like to ask for help. No one really likes to ask for help, but there's the right kind of help and the wrong kind of help. Who is speaking to you? What is your communication style like? And understanding that, taking the time to do it and be very patient with it. It's a very humbling process to be able to be vulnerable and tell your story. I encourage you ladies out there to tell your story more because it doesn't have to be so one-sided. Know exactly where you stand and what your future looks like. Again, one of our audience questions today is, what is the first step to preparing for retirement? Depending on your age, if it's tomorrow, we got a lot of work to do, right? But preparing for retirement is getting some educational pieces in your tool house, get some knowledge about things that you need to consider. One of the biggest concerns I see when someone's really looking at retirement is, my money, I've been working hard for it, but now my money has to work hard for me. Can my money actually outlast my life? Can it continue to give me income for the rest of my life? And what will happen in the event that I have a partner spouse, their income stop in the event that they had an early death we didn't really plan for? So what do we do? How do we kind of fill those gaps? How do we fill in the pieces that make sense? Part of this planning process is really getting to know how your relationship with money is to start. We have a very comprehensive questionnaire that we start our clients with, knowing exactly, how do they spend money? If they have credit cards, what are they dependent upon? How much are their bills? How much are their monthly expenses looking like? But cash flow is a very important part of the process. Everyone has goals. So I would say the first place to start is really think about what those goals are going to look like for retirement. What is the most important part to you? What's your priority? What are you gleaning from what you want your visualization of retirement to look like? If you haven't really stopped and paused and said, okay, this is what I want to do. We're still in a pandemic time frame. Can we do all the traveling that we would have wanted to do when we were actually thinking about retirement before? Maybe not so much. We have hope that we can do it again, but there might be some restrictions. But you can only travel so much. Maybe you pick up a sport. Maybe you pick up pickleball or tennis or golf. And those are things that you do, and that keeps you very active. We have a lady that just recently retired, and that's her biggest thing. She likes to run, and she loves to play tennis, and she wants to go to the U.S. Open. Those are things that she's planning for, even in a pandemic world. So where do you start? What are your goals? What does retirement visualization look like to you? That's where I would start. And then how disciplined and how committed are you going to be to make that happen? It takes commitment. It takes drive. It takes, consistency and long-term planning to make that retirement life the one you want it to be. It's not something where you're going to get rich quick overnight. It's something that takes years to plan for. And if you didn't plan for it, what are you willing to sacrifice to give up so you can retire if that's truly what you want to do? Because if your income's going to be far less, that might be the story that you have. But if you could have done something different about it, now's the time to take action. Don't procrastinate. Get some education, get some help. Maybe call us for a complimentary consultation, and we'll be happy to go through that process with you. 619-640-2622, or you're welcome to reach out through the link down below in the chat. as well as going to elizabeth.dawson.com and taking a look at all the other educational materials that we have there, as well as the Ways to Love Your Money website. We encourage you to get empowered. Ladies, it's time to stand up for yourself, do the financial planning that you need to do so that you have a better relationship with money. And again, you can become finally financially free. We'll be back next week, so stay tuned. The information provided in this show is for informational and educational purposes only. This show is not investment advice, nor is it intended to address the financial needs of any particular viewer. The opinions expressed on this show are not intended to be an endorsement of any particular investment strategy or service of any other kind. You must make an independent decision regarding investments or strategies mentioned throughout the show. Before acting on information in this show, you should consider whether it is suitable for your particular situation and strongly consider seeking advice from a financial advisor.